Hello, and welcome to yet another interesting episode of Tech and Beyond. Here we explore the technology, the innovation, and the ideas shaping our digital future. I am your host, Peter Mary today. On today's conversation, we'll be talking about the just signed National Sovereign Cloud Initiative, NSCI, and what it means for Nigerians. Now, when we use our phone every day, we probably do not think about where all our information goes to, from our messages, our calls, and every of our personal details. So much of what we do online depend on data being stored somewhere. But have we ever wondered where does all this information goes to? And most importantly, who controls the infrastructure that stores them? These are more what we'll be talking about on today's episode. I have here with me in the studio the Acting Director of Regulation and Compliance at the National Information Technology Development Agency, NICTA, Mr. Emmanuel Edet. It's a pleasure to have you join us today, sir.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
All right, let's start from the basic. Because when we talk about sovereign cloud, a lot of people think it's a technical term that people in the tech industry are supposed to understand. So to put it simply, what exactly is the National Sovereign Cloud Initiative? And why should an ordinary Nigerian or an average Nigerian care about where their digital data is being stored?
Thank you very much, Mary. And I would like to write on your opening,
Okay.
because that gives a clear analogy of what cloud is all about.
Okay.
First of all, we have to understand the nature of cloud, which basically is transferring your computing to a data center, which is usually not within your jurisdiction most of the time. And at the same time, also transferring computing power to that sort of offshore storage space. And so that's where cloud actually comes in. And that's the whole essence of cloud. Over the past few years, most of the activities we do online has been transferred to the cloud. From your browsing your internet, your free email, Gmail, or Yahoo, as the case may be, your WhatsApp, all those messages, even though they'll tell you they're backing it up on your phone, they're encrypted, they are stored in a cloud. And this gives a sort of seamless interaction, which ensures that you get the services you require from your NIN all the way to your hospital records. They are all stored in the cloud. So the question now would be, who is in control of that cloud jurisdictionally? So if you have a problem with another country that stores your data, what are the issues? What are the challenges? Do you have control over that particular data? What happens if WhatsApp decides to cut off the server and switch it off because of some political statements or some issues around your country and jurisdiction? It creates a lot of problems. What happens to your international traffic when your banking data is stored outside the country? It becomes a big issue. And well, while these issues have not arisen, but we've seen international politics has gotten to a state where people use any type of means to ensure they have political gains and international recognition. And so it becomes necessary for us to decide to sort of take control of what we consider our national data. So data that is generated and processed in Nigeria should at some point be governed by Nigerian laws and should be under the control of Nigerians. Now that is the whole summary of what the Nigerian Sovereign Cloud is all about. So it consists of about 4 documents. We have the National Cloud Technical Guidelines, which is basically the how-to maintain and run the cloud, your encryption rules, your storage rules, and your capacity. We have the parent document, which is a National Cloud Guideline that actually encourages the use of cloud for government and regulated sector and other designated sectors. And then we have the assurance framework the digital assurance framework, which ensures that there's some form of certification to give assurance to those who are providing the services. And then finally, we have the cloud strategy, which it's an investment strategy, which basically tells capital where your potentials opportunities are whenever you're trying to invest in Nigeria. So it's important that Nigerians should know where their data is stored because one, the data belongs to Nigerians. Very, very important. And data is the currency of digital transactions. And so when you lose your data, you basically lose your identity online. And so it becomes a very important thing for us to ensure that at any point in time, Nigeria has sovereignty over the data of its citizens. Thank you.
Well, it's actually very interesting the perspective you've taken into because when you think about it now, it makes you realize that something as simple as using an app, like you've mentioned, WhatsApp and TikTok and the like, and we've seen incidences where these social media platforms have had issues with one particular jurisdiction and it stopped working. So something as simple as using your app or even online transaction is connected to a much bigger picture, I mean, more detailed infrastructure than we think about. Now, away from where these things are installed, I know a lot of people will be wondering, okay, what does this have to do with me? What important do I have to benefit from it? If you're going to be building more of this infrastructure in Nigeria, the benefit should go beyond just the technology itself. So it brings me, you mentioned something about building infrastructure for data sovereign cloud in Nigeria. So my question will be like, how can keeping our cloud more explicitly, how can keeping our sovereign cloud infrastructure and data within Nigeria benefit everyday Nigerians?
All right, thank you. I think first of all, one thing we have to understand is that the advocacy or the drive is not local storage of data.
Okay.
No, the drive is more logical control of data. Yes, local storage of data is part of that drive, but it's not an exclusive initiative that makes sure that every data is stored in Nigeria. No, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
What we're actually talking about is Nigeria having the ability to control and handle its own data of its citizens. So directly back to your question, I think one of the things that we should understand is that over the past few years, through our IT project clearance, we've understood that government services have kind of been fragmented because government agencies are acquiring technology and building infrastructure in silos. And so one of the things that we had decided to do was to ensure that we actually create a shared platform where you can actually mitigate some of the cost in terms of acquisition of infrastructure. So based on this, we have realized that there's a little bit of cost savings. I mean, the data is out there that we have saved over 3 trillion in terms of our IT clearance. And so this money can be repurposed for another function, which will help an average Nigerian. That's number one. Number two, in terms of accessibility, the cloud presents standards and assurance for government services that are going digital. And so that makes it possible for citizens to have better access to government services, which will now be available on the cloud. Because the cloud first option that we are promoting amongst federal MDAs especially will give you the opportunity for those services to be available in a uniform and an assured manner so that Nigerians can benefit from it. Of course, there's also the cost. I had mentioned the cost in terms of project before, the cost in terms of storage and use of compute power. We all know about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
A lot of us are running applications on servers that are outside this country and we're uploading documents and we don't really know where those documents end up because they train these large language models. So this gives an opportunity for us to actually situate our local customs and culture into the narrative as far as compute is concerned in digital terms. So that will also assist Nigerians to ensure that you have availability of your local custom and culture in an environment that is suitable for you. And then finally, it will also help Nigerians, give Nigerians the opportunity to actually invest in this infrastructure. Like our cloud investment strategy shows the opportunities that are available. And eventually, we know that's going to create a market that will enable the private sector to latch onto and provide those services in order to gain financial benefits from this commercial environment that we are creating. So by and large, from the high cadre to the what I won't call them low cadre, but it covers every citizen.
Every aspect.
Every citizen in Nigeria,
Yes.
gives the opportunity to access government services, gives the government opportunity to save when it comes to building and fitting out IT infrastructure, and also gives the private sector an opportunity to invest in Nigeria and continue to grow economically, which will eventually create jobs.
Thank you so much for that perspective you've given us, because now we know that we are not just talking about just servers and cloud. We are talking about the economy. We're talking about
Yes.
businesses, about job, and about digital services that every people use every day.
Yes.
So, and as you've mentioned before, we are gradually or already becoming too dependent on digital services platform. We use them a lot for everything, whether for browsing, accessing information, and the like of that. So having this in our country is actually a very good initiative, and I appreciate you for bringing more light on that. So moving on to our next question, I think you've talked a little bit about it, but I'd still like to ask again: how will NSCI help government, agencies and financial institutions deliver faster, safer, reliable digital services in Nigeria?
All right, thank you very much. I think it was last year, a couple of years ago, when some of our financial services were slow and cut off. And that was because one of the major links that we relied on to provide those services was affected. And so it was a bit difficult for banks to be able to access data to fulfill their obligation to citizens. So this gives you a great scenario of what can happen when we are wholly dependent on data storage outside the country. In terms of efficiency, I would say that when this is done, efficiency goes up close to about 40% for services that are going to be delivered. It will drive down the cost, as I've mentioned.
Yeah.
You no longer have to pay so much to get and have access to data stored outside Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have our internet exchange points, so local traffic will be routed locally, which not only makes it faster, but makes it more efficient, and the cost is driven down, like I mentioned. For government services, there will be an improvement because we are creating standards, not only for storage, but processing services of government. It will enable government agencies to be able to provide the kind of world-class services that is required in a growing digital economy such as Nigeria. Because by creating those standards, government agencies will meet the required standard to deliver services to Nigerian citizens. NIDA has been involved with 3 million tech talents, and this pool of talent that we are growing is the workforce that will provide some of the support we require for all these initiatives that we are taking. So we are looking at a whole ecosystem. And so when we mention the initiative, our aim is to ensure that citizens benefit, governments benefit, private sector benefit by cutting costs, by having better services, and providing a platform to ensure that these services are driven by the private sector to increase efficiency. And at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. And it's not a closed circuit. We are also, because of, if you look at our cloud investment strategy, we are inviting hyperscalers all over the world to come to Nigeria and put those infrastructure in Nigeria. This will in turn create a better atmosphere, and it will give us the opportunity to even provide the services to other countries within the sub-region as well. So we are not only targeting closing of Nigeria, we're not targeting closing of Nigeria, rather we are targeting enabling Nigeria to be a platform that will provide cloud services and improve IT, not only in Nigeria itself, but across Africa and indeed the entire world. That's our target eventually.
That is a beautiful target, and I know we can achieve it.
Yes, we
And
can.
with the growing of digital ecosystem in Nigeria, I can see that the future definitely is going to be much brighter
Yes,
and
it
more
is.
better than now.
Yes, it
Thank you
is.
so much. I
Thank
wish I have the time to ask you more questions because this conversation is very interesting, but
Yes, it is.
we'll be rounding up here. So, as you have heard now, the National Sovereign Cloud isn't just about where our data is stored, but it's about building infrastructures that is capable of putting together Nigeria growing digital economy. That is what it's all about, and it encompasses all around both the government agencies and the private sector. So, I would like to thank Mr. Emmanuel Edet once again for being on the show with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
I
for
appreciate
coming.
the time.
And to our viewers, thank you always for watching. Until we come your way next time. Bye for now.